Alright guys, so today I'm going to be doing a very simple watercolor painting, and I've got here Prang's set of 16 colors is what I will be using, and I'll mostly be using the blue, the purple, the light blue, and the lighter purple. And I'm going to start with a wet on wet technique, so I'm going to be wetting my paper with just water first. And then I'm going to dab the paint into the wet paper. And I'm using a flat paintbrush, and it's a size half. And I've got my nice clean water here. So I'm going to go ahead and wet my brush and start wetting my paper. And you want your paper to stay fairly moist for the wet on wet technique that I'm going to be doing, so that's why I'm using the large brush, so I can cover more area of the paper quicker so it will not dry out, because if your paper dries out, the technique we're doing is not going to work very well and you're not going to have as much success. So you can use a large brush, you could use a little spritz bottle. If you wanted to do that, you can use a sponge, whatever you are the most comfortable using, feel free to use. But I'm using the I'm using the flat brush. And I'm making sure my paper is nice and wet. Then I'm going to go in with my number 4 round, and I'm going to wet it, and I want to build up a decent amount, not a ton, but a pretty good amount of water in my paint as well. And then I'm just going to touch it to the paper. And if you want it darker, you can charge your paint. You can go back and really rub the brush in it and rub it in the paint and make it darker. So I'm going to start with the blue. And I'm just going to randomly touch various places on my paper. And then I think I'm going to go in now with the purple. And again, all I'm doing is my paper is already wet. I'm adding water to my watercolors, and then I'm just touching the paper and letting it bleed out into the water that's already on the paper. And I'll go in with this lighter blue. Now I know it's kind of hard to see with the camera, but it is a much lighter, kind of an aqua or a turquoise blue. Water dried out right here. And if you want, when you go back and wet, it helps to have clean water. Otherwise, when you go back and wet your paper with this water, it will be whatever color this is. So keep that in mind if you want to go back and re-wet your paper in areas. If you want it white, you need the clear water. If you don't care, like if I dip it in here, if you don't care if it's got that little tint, by all means use the same water. But if you want it to stay clean, you also need to have on hand a clean dish of water. And I'm going to keep going in and just dotting and adding paint. You can keep doing this until you're happy with it. When you're happy with the way it looks, by all means stop. I'm going to keep working a little bit more. And again, if you want it nice and dark, be sure you go in and really charge that paint, rubbing your brush in the paint, getting a lot of paint built up on your brush, then going back and dripping it in. And the more water you have, the more it'll spread and the lighter it'll get. You can see here I didn't have very much water, so when I dropped it in, it stayed fairly dark. And you may want really dark areas. If not, dilute the area and just watch your paint bleed. And I am using Strathmore mixed media paper, which holds the paint fairly well. You can always use watercolor paper if you have it, but if you don't have it or cannot afford it, I'm using mixed media. You want to use a decent amount weighted paper, and 90 pound works okay. You do get some wrinkles, and you may have to put a book on it or something to kind of get it to flatten out. I'm not sure. My mixed media paper is 140 pound. And again, it holds it really well because it's meant to be used with different types of media. So watercolor, paint, ink, mixed media is supposed to be able to take it. So a lot of times I will just buy mixed media paper and just use it for pretty much everything, unless it's just something I really need specifically. It's just cheaper and easier to buy the mixed media, and then I can use it for whatever I want. Alright, so before we can do our next step, we have to let this dry. Alright guys, we're going to move on to our next step, and I already prepped this so it's nice and dry. And this is actually the 90 pound, so you can kind of look and see it does wrinkle up a little bit, but it still holds the water and takes the water. So this is what it looks like doing the wet on wet with the 90 pound. So what I'm going to do now is I want to add some little starbursts to my background. So I'm not going to use the watercolors anymore. And I'm going to switch out my water here. So I've got a little dish of water. I may take a little bit of that out. So I've got a little teeny amount of water in here. And then I'm going to add some white acrylic paint because I'm going to do a little bit of splatter. And I like to water mine down a little bit so it's nice and runny, so I can get that good splatter effect. So I've got my acrylic in here, and I'm just going to stir it up. I may need a little bit more paint. I may still have too much water. And you're more than welcome to just go straight in with the paint, but I prefer to dilute it a little bit. And if you do not have something under your painting, if you're working on a table or something you value or you do not want to get paint on, you need to have some sort of surface under your painting when you do this step, because you never know which way the paint is going to fly. So now that I've got it nice and stirred up, I'm just going to dip my brush in here, and I hold it over my painting, and I just take it and I hit it with my finger. I'm just bringing my finger down and hitting it on my brush, and I'm doing that vertically. I'm bringing my finger straight up and down and hitting my brush with my finger. You can add as little or as much as you want. So however many little starbursts you want. I'm going to kind of do a little lot. So typically the less amount you have on here, the smaller your little splatters will be. And you can tell when I first start I get some big ones. But if you want tiny ones, you may just dip a little bit into the paint, not a big scoop, and you can get those nice fine little ones. You can also use a toothbrush for this, but I prefer to not get all that paint and stuff up under my fingernails and everything, because you have to take it and brush the toothbrush with your thumb to get the bristles to spray the paint out. And I don't like doing that, so I'm using a paintbrush. Alright, so now that that's done, we gotta let this dry before we move on to our next step. Alright guys, so my paper is relatively dry, not 100% dry. And we're gonna move on to our next step, which is cutting out our animal shape. And I like to do this first before I paint the trees on. Now you could go ahead and paint your trees just all along the bottom, but I like to go ahead and have my animal shape cut out first so I can kind of see where I want to place my trees when I am painting. And you can do whatever shape you want. I'm doing a wolf head, and you can draw your own and cut it out and make a template, or you can go online and look up animal silhouettes if you wanted to do a bear. If you wanted to do an eagle, if you wanted to do a wolf head, just Google wolf head clip art, or whatever you want to use, and just print it off. All you need is the basic outline of whatever animal you are doing. So this is my wolf head, and I'm going to flip this over. I think maybe some of my stars might transfer to here, but I'm going to go ahead and flip this over on the back. And I'm going to take my wolf head, and I'm just simply going to trace my template that I made, and then I will cut it out. And then one trick you can do if you care about symmetry or have a hard time making your sides even, all you have to do is, before you draw, take your paper, fold it in half, and then just draw one half of your animal, leave it folded, cut it out, and then once you have it cut it out, you can open it up and you'll have both sides and it'll be nice and even. Now if you don't care if your animal head is even, or if you like the asymmetrical qualities of it, by all means just draw the whole thing out if you want. But if you like to have it nice and even, just fold it in half, draw one side, cut it out, and then open it up, and it will be nice and even. So I've got my head traced, and I probably got a little bit on, yeah, just a little bit. That's why you gotta make sure it's dry before you do this, but I'm a little impatient. I wanna go ahead and move on to my next step. So I'm gonna cut this guy out, and then I'm gonna start painting my trees. Alrighty, he is done. So next step, I need some black acrylic paint. And let's see, let's squirt it in. And I'm not sure how well this paint's gonna do. It's a little runny, but it's just what I grabbed, so we'll see. It may not work very well. I may test it out on here first. So for my trees, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to use a piece of my scrap paper that I cut from my wolf head. You could use a flat brush if you want, or you can use cardboard to do your trees if you would prefer, but I'm just going to use my scraps. But first, I am going to test my acrylic paint on here and make sure it is not going to be really runny. Otherwise, I may have to go get something else. I don't think I'm going to like that. Okay guys, so I was able to track down some paint. It's not exactly what I wanted, but I do not know where I have put my case of acrylic paint. It's around here somewhere, but I do not know where it is, so I'm going to be using the gouache acrylic instead. It is jet black. And again, before I paint, I'm going to test it out on my little paper I got here. I'm going to tear this because I do not want it to be super long. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's good. So I'm going to take my little strip of paper here that I have folded, and I'm recycling. I'm using my scraps from cutting out my little wolf head template here. So I'm recycling. And all I'm doing is taking my strip of paper and I'm just running it or dipping it in the paint. And I'm going to take it and I'm just going to start making tree trunks. And again, this is why I like cutting the head out, because then I can kind of see where I want my trees to go. And if you go ahead and paint your trees and then cut your head out, you may not be as happy with the results. So I like to go ahead and have the shape here so I can kind of gauge where I want to paint my trees. And then you could always go in after this step and add more details if you wanted to draw eyes, if you wanted to add a little something in the ears, if you wanted to get a fine line like a micron and draw some flowing fur. I'm just doing mine pretty simple. I've got the silhouette here and the trees are silhouetted, and that's all I'm going to do. So now that I've got all my tree trunks, I'm just going to take my paper and kind of fold it. So I've got a nice little V, and I'm going to use that to make my tree limbs, because I am doing pine trees. And again, just dipping it in the paint and just going along my tree line and then adding my limbs for my pine trees. And I don't care that it's a little sloppy, it's just kind of a fun painting project. If you want them, again, to look nicer and neater, you're more than welcome to use a flat brush, or you could even use a round if you wanted to. But this is just something for fun, so I don't care too badly if my trees are a little messy. Alright, and that is it. So when you're done and it's dry, if you want to take it and mount it on something, you could put it on black paper, you could do gray, you could do one of the colors that we used in here. And again, this is just a fun little watercolor project that you can do on a rainy day, or you can do with your kiddos. It's very, very easy. It's just wet on wet. You're wetting your paper, you're getting paint, whatever colors you want. Just make sure you're not using complementary colors, or when you dab them in here, you will get brown. Okay, so if you do not know what complementary colors are, you need to look them up. They are blue and orange, red and green, and yellow and violet. So if you mix any of those together, you will get brown because they are complementary colors. But again, you can use whatever colors you want except complementary. Make your nice little background. Pick your animal shape, whatever kind of animal shape you want, your favorite animal. Make a template. Cut it out. Trace it onto your background. Cut out your background. Add your trees, and that's it, and then we're done. And I'm also going to include a couple of other examples at the end of the video so you can kind of see some other ones I've done. I hope you try it and you enjoy it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.